Welcome to the Consulting Success Podcast with your host, Michael Sapersky, where we take you deep into the world of elite consultants.
Hey, it's Michael Sapersky, and today I'm very excited to have Liz Kislik joining us. Liz, welcome.
Thanks, Michael. I'm happy to be here.
Yeah, I'm really excited to jump right in here. Liz, for those who don't know you, explain what you do.
Well, you know how in almost every organization, once you have more than a handful of people, problems come up.
Really?
Conflicts and seems to happen almost every time.
Yeah.
So communication problems, different kinds of inter-departmental conflicts, operating issues, and they gum up the works and slow things down. And so I go into organizations and help people figure out what's really going on and how to get out of their own way so they can get better results and do more and feel better at work. And it's a blast.
Well, it sounds like you literally are walking on landmines all day. So no pun intended, but certainly it does sound like a blast. I want to dive more into that and really understand more of the work that you do. But before we explore that, how did you get to where you are today? I mean, take us kind of back a little bit. What's your education like? Where did you come from? How did you get into consulting in this kind of work?
So my education, I started out with a BA in American Studies, and I couldn't find a summer job one year while I was in college. And my neighbor said, "Oh, my brother's company hires lots of kids. I'll get the number."
Okay.
And I called and I got a job selling TV Guide magazine. This was in the late 70s.
I remember TV Guides, yeah.
Yes. And it was a privately held telemarketing agency, the first one in the country founded as an agency. And when I graduated from college, they hired me ostensibly to be an account executive, but I did everything. I had a new job every 6 months there. And so I learned the entire business. And unfortunately, the owner died without a succession plan. And it was undercapitalized. And the widow reorganized and promoted me to EVP. I'd been there for a while. By then, I had already run a 300-person contact center, had been responsible for client services. But she also brought in new ownership to buy her out, and I didn't like the direction things were going. So I got out, and I was pretty well known in the direct marketing industry. I'd been very active at the DMA. And so in less than a week, other consultants heard that I was out and subcontracted work to me.
Okay.
And I've just been working forever.
Just ever since then. So, I mean, how long are we talking about in terms of from when you first got that job selling the TV guides to having the opportunity to move into that, EVP type of position? How many years are we talking about?
So it was 2 summers. One was I was actually on the phone. I also sold microwave ovens by phone, which is kind of, some of these things are just shocking what can be done. And after the second summer, so after I graduated, I went back, and full time I was there, I think, 8.5 years.
Okay. Yeah. No,
and then
quite a ride, it sounds like.
Very lucky, hard work, but very lucky. And I'll have had my own practice. I'm just coming on almost 30 years.
So I think one thing you said there is really interesting. You said you're very lucky, but a lot of hard work. And oftentimes people are kind of looking for things to make them lucky, right? They're looking for that new technology or some kind of shiny, object to catapult their business to a higher level of success. But it sounds like that, for you, maybe there's some elements of luck, but you certainly put in a lot of hard work.
I would agree with that. I think you can be lucky, like being hit by a bolt of lightning,
Mm-hmm.
but it's hard to sustain that kind of luck. That's the lottery kind of luck where, you've read the articles. People get in trouble that way. Too much success with no preparation. I think most real successes are that kind of 20 years of work and then bolt out of the blue.
Mm.
I think it helps a lot to know what you're talking about.
Yeah.
So having the practice of really doing the work, understanding what it takes, and building, then you have credibility when someone's considering you for whatever it is they need done.
Right. So, these days, I know that you've done work with like the American Express, American Red Cross, Gap, Comcast, Guthy-Renker, Staples, right? A whole bunch of other organizations. How did you go from when you first got those initial kind of, subcontracts to building your consulting business? Was it just you got some contracts, like some subcontracts that led to people hearing about your work and people hiring you, or was there a very intentional plan that you followed to kind of get to where you are today?
I wish I could say I had an intentional plan. Certainly at the beginning, I didn't.
Mm-hmm.
Most of it was relationship, and I would say that falls into two categories. The obvious one is the kind of referral relationship where you know people who think well of you, and when they hear of an opportunity or somebody else's need, they recommend you.
Mm-hmm.
And I would again say I've been very lucky, because through the years that's always been unbelievably productive for me. But it takes hard work to make and keep those relationships. And I think the way that I probably did that the most was by being active in a variety of volunteer organizations. I've served on several nonprofit boards. So that means spending a lot of time with a lot of different kinds of people who see you at work when you're not trying to get anything from them. You're just working, collaborating, acting as a good colleague. And that's a way to build someone's sense of security and trust that you know what you're doing and could bring value to whatever's going on. So that's one major thing. A number of my relationships have been client relationships that I actually worked with on those boards, and then they became clients. So it's a very long sales cycle.
Right.
But it's pretty deep. So then the relationships themselves, I'm just starting another project for a client I have been working with for at least 20 years. And not every year that I see them, but they keep coming back because that's the kind of basis we have.
Right. You mentioned that to generate the level of referrals and opportunities that you've received over all these years takes a lot of hard work. You talked about being part of different boards and volunteering. Is that the hard work that you're referring to, or is there some other step, or a series of steps or activities that that you're doing consistently to keep kind of that referral engine running?
Good. That's a good question. So in the early years, the other thing that was very productive was I wrote articles for a number of the trade magazines in the direct marketing area, and I spoke at conferences pretty early that were focused primarily at direct marketing audiences. And so I had a general reputation. People just knew who I was. Many of those organizations and publications actually don't exist anymore. Right. Models have been disrupted and all these things go away.
Yeah.
So now it's a combination of things. It's the in-person being with people in these volunteer situations. It's maintaining a fairly large list of contacts over years and being in touch with them. I write a weekly blog, and I have a monthly emailed compilation of those blogs. And that compilation every month has a kind of personal message from me to my readers. So that's a great way to stay in touch with a lot of people that I know but don't get to see. And, they write back to me. It's so nice. And putting yourself out there in some consistent kind of way. I've started writing for Harvard Business Review, for example. Those kinds of things increase your credibility for people who don't know you.
Right. And were you doing that? So in the early days, when you first started writing for those trade publications, like in the direct marketing kind of industry or field, did you see an impact right away from that on your business, or was it more authority building?
No, it still took time. Yeah, it still took time. Every once in a while, I would speak. Somebody would come up to me at the end of a session, and within 2 or 3 months, I'd be helping them with a project. But more typically, 3 years later, I'd hear from them.
Right.
6 years later, I'd hear from them. And that's almost whether I was in touch with them on an ongoing basis or not. And I think part of it is that the work I do is not quick fix kind of work. And so people only decide as business leaders to do deep work when they're ready for it, because it's disruptive. You can really get better results and change a lot of things for the good. But in the short term, it takes time and effort and energy, and it's disruptive to the ongoing work process. So you really have to be committed. And so even people who knew they had certain kinds of business problems where I could be helpful, and they might have asked me questions, weren't necessarily ready to bring me in right away.
Right. So you had a long sales cycle. What would you do? Or maybe what are you doing differently today? So someone might look at that and say, well, that's nice, Liz. And I see the value of doing that over the long term, but I want to build my pipeline now. I want, to really get more clients coming in now. What's your thoughts on that? What could someone do to maybe, speed up that sales cycle?
Yes. So I would have to say that the quicker way would not be my style. So it's not that I could point them to the actions I've taken that made that work.
Right.
So I don't know if I would take my advice on that, actually.
No, but I love that. So tell me more about that. When you say it's not your style, why is it not your style? And what do you really mean by that?
So I'll give you an example. I went to what you'd call one sales meeting a few years ago with a company that contacted me because they thought of me as a kind of expert in certain kinds of customer service. Now, I knew of them as having a reputation for efficiency, but driving their people very hard. And I actually believe that for the long term, you do better to develop your people, take care of them, treat them well, and then they work very hard for you. They stay, they don't turn over, that kind of stuff.
Sure.
And in this meeting, after about 20 minutes of discussion, it became clear that we just didn't have the same philosophy. And I suggested at that point that it actually didn't make sense to continue the conversation. We actually believed different things. So the fact that I've helped my clients be successful in certain ways doesn't mean that that can happen quickly.
Right.
And so a quick sales process where I can say to you, oh, these are exactly the results I can deliver, it's not what happens in my processes. Because here's another example. I don't answer RFPs, for example, because the client's assessment of the problem is often inaccurate.
Right.
Or it's accurate as far as they can see it,
Mm-hmm.
but it's incomplete because there are lots of other things going on that they may not recognize.
Right.
And it's not until you go in and assess that you can figure out what's going on. So I'm much more from the long view and really checking things out rather than the quick fix. That being said, if somebody wanted to speed up their pipeline, I really follow, I know you know Dory Clark.
Mm-hmm.
I read her book Stand Out, and then I took a course with her, and she has a kind of three-pronged approach, and I use all her approaches, although not to the level of ginning up the machine that I think somebody else could do.
Right.
And those things are creating a public presence and social proof, and you do that in general by having good content to share and demonstrating your expertise, and building network so that there are people who look to you and who will refer you, etc. I mean, I could blog more frequently. I could write for more places. All those things do take time, though, so you have to choose where you're going to put it.
Right. So let me ask you about that, because I mean, clearly you're very selective with your clients, right? You want to ensure that there's a real fit that allows you to add the most value, which makes a lot of sense. Were you always like that, or just as the business developed?
So in the early years, I wasn't discerning enough yet to always be like that. And I took some jobs where I was happy to do the work and the work went well, but I wasn't looking for any repeat business.
Right.
I had one client where I actually resigned at the first possible legitimate point to do so, because every day, you know, I visited them on several occasions, and every day there would be somebody crying in the reception area.
Right.
And I didn't want to work in that kind of place. So as soon as it was legitimate to say, you know, we came to this point in the project, why don't we call it quits? I really care about what kind of place it is. And that makes a difference because, for example, I've worked with, you know, lower and middle level managers who then, when they have decision power, come looking for me.
Right.
So what's better, you know, for me, what's better than that? I think it's great.
Liz, let me ask you, I mean, what's your mindset around that? Because I think a lot of consultants, you know, want to be more selective with clients. They want to be in a position where they can say no to the wrong ones, so they can, you know, be able to say yes to only the right ones. But there is, I think, a level of confidence that is required, a level of at least understanding, because a lot of people look at that and go, well, yeah, but I need to generate more business, and maybe I can make some compromises in terms of who I work with. And so though they'd like to have like the ideal client every single time, sometimes they're a little bit more flexible in, you know, allowing and saying yes to projects that may not actually be the right fit. So just what's your mindset around that, especially in terms of how it affects your overall, you know, business success and business development and revenues?
While we work with a lot of seasoned and experienced consultants here at Consulting Success, I'm often contacted by new early stage consultants. Invariably, the question I'm asked is, what are the steps I should take to become a successful consultant and grow my consulting business to my first 6 figures per year? Well, I'm excited to announce that we've opened the doors for our Momentum program. This is our most popular program for early stage consultants, and it has helped almost 1,000 consultants to start, run, and grow successful consulting businesses. It gives you the step-by-step plan to help you with your messaging, your fees, and pricing strategies, how to win more proposals, how to go to market more effectively, developing a marketing system to generate leads consistently, and so much more. And right now, until September the 19th, you can sign up for Momentum and get 50% off the regular price by going to consultingsuccess.com/audio. That's consultingsuccess.com/audio, AUDIO. Only 100 spots are available to join Momentum and get 50% off. This deal is only available until September the 19th or until all 100 spots are gone. We won't be opening up new spots in this program for several months, so don't wait. Go to consultingsuccess.com/audio. That's consultingsuccess.com/audio. AUDIO.
Okay, so that's a great question because it almost becomes a kind of moral set too, I think. What I found was that if I didn't think we were a really good fit, or if I felt we were just trying to grind to some result, instead of actually trying to change the business for the better so that they could continue to generate good results over time.
Mm-hmm.
First of all, I wasn't so happy, and I'm sure I wasn't as creative. And often, and many consultants find this and feel they have to put up with it. Sometimes in the earlier years, I felt I wasn't treated so well.
Mm.
And that made me very unhappy. I didn't like it one bit. Part of why I like being an independent is because the truth is, it's always up to me.
Right.
And that freedom is a huge thing for me. So I don't want to work with people who are not fully respectful the same way that I want to be respectful of them. Now, how do you make that work? So one thing is, this is where I do feel being lucky really matters, because no matter how diligent you are, you can't always know that you're going to get a call when you need to get one, you know.
Mm-hmm.
But I've always worked very hard and manage a bank account. So there has been a certain amount of up and down. But I don't know. I guess I've planned to always, my great grandmother said you have to have a cushion.
Mm-hmm.
And I've always believed in having that. And I think my work is better by virtue of taking work that I think is good work. And so when you get, I can't say that all my assignments are six-figure assignments, but when you get those, you really feel you've earned them, and they're very wonderful.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, I think that's a great share. One thing I noticed, Liz, and I'm just going to take the conversation a little bit kind of more tactical now, is that, it seems like you've made a very conscious decision to focus on branding in your business. When I take a look at your website, from the photography to the overall design, what role does branding play for you?
I have to think about how to answer that. So here's what strikes me. I care that a prospect coming to the site can tell right away that I have concepts about how things ought to be and a track record to show that it's real.
Mm.
Both of those are important to me. The other thing that's important, there are now a gazillion people called coaches.
Mm-hmm.
And even 15 years ago, it was much rarer than it is now. And I call myself a consultant and coach. I certainly do coaching, but I always want it clear that my intention is to be serving and building a business. And the reason I think that distinction is important is a lot of coaches who are brought in to help an individual executive or up-and-coming manager, they often let that individual take the lead, and they just try to prop them up or support them or help develop them in whatever directions they want to go.
Mm-hmm.
And because of my practical business background, I want to see what's good for the business, what's good out in the marketplace, how can they best serve their customers, how can they organize well. And so I do my coaching within a context of consulting with what I hope is a general level of business acumen.
Right.
And I think that's actually a differentiator for me, and I hope the branding shows that.
What about your name? I mean, you've intentionally kind of positioned your name as Liz Kislik Associates. Talk to me a little bit about the decision to use, first of all, your name and then adding associates there versus coming up with a different company name or just not even having associates.
So that's two things. When I first started, it was long enough ago that you actually had credibility if you looked larger.
Mm-hmm.
And in New York State, you needed to have more than one person to have a plural name registered with the state. So my husband was the other person.
Mm-hmm.
And all the branding at that time was actually more dense, more corporate sounding. And that way I was able, in effect, to pitch against competitors that were larger organizations.
Yeah.
And from time to time, I might subcontract to somebody else, particularly, in the tech area, that kind of thing.
Right.
But it became clear that really what it was that the companies that I cared about wanted to hire my company because they were hiring me.
Mm-hmm.
So it just made sense to stick with that instead of coming up with some name, a manufactured name.
Sure.
That sounds like a great concept. This way everybody knows what it is.
So, I mean, right now, how is your business structured? Is it yourself? Do you work with other contractors? Are there any other full-time employees?
I have a part-time assistant, and I don't generally work with other contractors. I'm not inherently opposed to it, but it just hasn't been the thing for a number of years. Much more, the work has been about my ability to go in, size up what's happening, and know what needs to be done. And then depending on the need of the business, sometimes I just design a project for them. Other times I'm embedded almost to the extent of acting as substitute executives when they're down staff, that kind of thing.
Mm.
So it really is my working with them in a very direct and hands-on way. And that's so rewarding.
So you made a very intentional decision to keep the business lean and to put yourself at the forefront, right, and really work closely with your clients. As you've made the decisions and you've kind of played that out, what's been your thoughts? How have you approached the idea of growing the business or scaling the business?
So I'm actually, in the middle of new thoughts now. Maybe I'll tell you a little about that. I never cared so much about scaling the business before because I just wanted to be busy, and I was busy, but I also wanted plenty of room for the rest of my life. I have 2 kids. I'm active in my community. I have a lot of life too, as well as the work. I don't intend to give anything up. Now, though, there are so many different models and different ways to work. I haven't gotten to the point of thinking I would do an online course, but I think about them if they would provide enough value. My hesitation in doing anything really different, Michael, actually comes from my concern about whether it will make enough difference. I know this works. I do worry, particularly for my kind of work, which is often so situational. I worry about whether not being so hands-on will actually deliver the same kind of value. So I'm thinking about it a lot, but I haven't gotten there yet.
Okay, good. I think it's an important topic. I mean, a lot of people don't think about it at all and kind of just let things go as they've always been going. Sometimes I've seen, they end up in a place where they've kind of created a monster of a business that they actually don't enjoy very much. Other times people realize that they're not really living to their full potential or not, executing to their full potential. So I think it's a great share and kind of reminder for people to explore that and give it some thought.
Yes. What I find for me is that the most exciting part is being with the people that I work with and therefore getting to know them. And in coursework, for example, or in a book, you don't get to know them. On the other hand, if you're only working with the few people you can manage, if all you have is your time, you don't get to have as much impact on as many people.
Right.
So it's an interesting trade-off, and maybe I'll resolve it or I'll move incrementally in some direction. I don't know. I tell my kids I'll be working when they put me in the home.
Right, yeah.
Because I just like it, so.
So you've been in the business, the consulting business now for 30 years, building your practice. What is one thing that stands out to you, an area where consultants often make mistakes, where maybe you hear from people that you know, or you just kind of see it in the marketplace, something that people do that you've had the experience now over time to know that it's just not the right thing to do, or typically doesn't create the level of results that they could be achieving if they approach it in a different way? What stands out for you as a common mistake?
So actually, when you started the question, I thought you were going to go to what my mistakes have been. I would say for me, I never build enough pipeline. I'm so focused on the work, and I love the work so much, and the pipeline part is less appealing to me. So That's my downfall.
Okay. Well, you're not alone, because I know a lot of other consultants.
Oh my God, I know.
Yeah.
Yeah. In terms of where other people might go awry, I don't believe there's easy money. And there are consultants that get big deals, or you can't understand how they get their work, that kind of thing. Mm-hmm. I think anybody who can sustain an ongoing practice is providing real value of some kind, even if it's not what it looks like on the surface. And the thing that I think is the most helpful is actually really understanding what your clients need. And there are so many different kinds of businesses and so many different executives. Some of them don't want the kind of depth that is the only thing I want to provide. Mm-hmm. They may be happier with a more transactional kind of approach. And there are consultants who are very happy providing that transaction. I think understanding the client is the most important thing, because there have been times where I've been hired to go in and clean something up, if we could say that. Mm-hmm. Either where promises were made about, it would take 3 months and we would suddenly have an entire inside sales force doing significantly better because they would follow this straightforward 1, 2, 3 program that, of course, didn't work exactly. And then we had to figure out, how could we really get the sales force doing better, slowly and more painstakingly? Or I've come in when there was a consultant to help with certain kinds of organizational changes without thinking through how the change over here might affect the department over there. Mm-hmm. And so really having to mop up and then resettle everybody and help everybody go through the process of healing. Sounds a little too spiritual perhaps, but getting over the brokenness and the pain that had come from these quick decisions, that sort of thing.
So really what I'm hearing you say is like having clarity around your ideal client and ensuring that it aligns with your values and your message so that there's a good fit.
Yes. And being open to client feedback all the time. Not just thinking of yourself as a tool that does something to a client. It's really important to do it with them.
Love it. Well, Liz, this has been a great conversation and a lot of fun. Thank you so much. And before we end off here, what's the best way for people to learn more about your work and connect with you?
Well, it's been a pleasure talking with you. You had very interesting questions. I enjoyed it. My website is www.lizkislik.com. And when you're there, you can sign up for the blog or the compilation. And I also have a field guide and checklist about dealing with conflict at work that might be helpful to people.
Good stuff. We'll definitely link that up. Again, Liz, thank you so much.
Michael, it's been a pleasure.
Are you ready to take your consulting business to the next level? Learn more about the Accelerator Coaching Program at consultingsuccess.com.